Hello and welcome back to my channel. My name is Ben, and for today's video I have a couple of announcements. One is I have just released my very first video game to itch.io. I am really excited about that. That is what today's video is going to be mostly about. I'm going to dive into it, get into the code, see what's going on, and just share that with you all. The other announcement is soon I will be having a special guest on the channel, and there we are going to be doing a little pair programming. If you're not familiar with that, we'll go into that into more detail in that video. But stick around for that. I'm really excited about that as well. But yeah, let's get into this game here. It's called Typey the Whale. It's a typing game for Windows. Um, this is this has been kind of a goal of mine of getting some an app published, you know, uh, into a public area, and just to have something that's a little bit more complete and polished. And that's kind of what I did. I had this game that I've been kind of toying with and using it as a learning opportunity, but I really wanted to kind of cross that finish line and get something out there. And this game was probably the best or the closest to that goal out of all the things I'm working on. So, like I said before, I'm going to get back to the Android chess app. Stick around for that. This is kind of like a side quest, if you will. But yeah, so let's jump in this. This is the on the right side here. You see the game kind of homepage, and here has kind of some how to play features, all that. But if you click download now, you can ignore this. Just click no thanks, and it'll automatically download for you. It's completely free. And then I also have a homepage for any future projects. They're going to all be here. I just have Typey here for now. And then on this page, I do have a link to a devlog that I wrote about this game. Again, link to the demo here. It has full gameplay there. It's a short video. If you haven't seen that on my shorts, you can check that out. And then also there's a link to the GitHub for the code. So if you want to take a closer look at that on your own machine, you can literally just download this code yourself, run it yourself. If you don't want to download it from itch. But anyways, let's just go ahead and just jump into, well, actually, before I do that, let me get the game running really quick. So when you download the game, you get this folder, and you can just double click on this .exe, and that will automatically start the game. So that's what I have here, and it's super simple. Just like any other typing game. As a kid growing up, I was really into typing games. I mean, even now as an adult, if you think of like Monkey Type and things like that, this is more of like a pretty minimalistic game. There's not a lot of depth to it, but I still think it's pretty fun to play. So if you just hit enter, it'll give you basically a word bank, and as you type, Typey is the name of this character. Typey the whale will start to swim. It's, again, pretty simple, but if you mess up, Typey doesn't feel so good and he loses his top hat. I don't know if anyone's noticed that yet. But yeah, you have to type the word correctly, and then he can start swimming again. Oh, I messed up again. So there we go. And just keep going. You get 60 seconds on the clock to type as many words as you can and to see how fast you can get Typey swimming. Of course, without messing up. Keep messing up. And there you go. That's the end of the game. You get this nice little happy Typey avatar here. You also get a words per minute, and of course the timer is at 0. So yeah, that is the whole game. Let's jump into the code. So here on the left is all the code for the game, basically, um, except for a word bank. So if you see this very first line here, this is an actual, it's basically an import. Um, it doesn't really say, it doesn't say import like you would normally see on like Kotlin or Java or even Swift, I think uses import. Yeah, a number of other languages say import, but here it's just require. And I wonder if I can. Okay, so I pulled up the words file. So this require it takes in a parameter, a string parameter of actual file name, and this has to be inside the same directory as this main.lua file. And so I actually pulled that up, and it's really super basic. It's just local variable table with all the words. So these are all the words that you see in the game. There's only 350. Full disclosure, I did use AI to generate this list. That's pretty much um, the entirety of me using AI on this project. But yeah, so once I had that here, oh, and the criteria I gave it was words with 3 characters or more, and the most common or frequently used words. So these are actually words that you will probably type very often. And so that was kind of important to me when I was designing and building this out, was actually having words that like make sense and you would probably use a lot of the time. Okay, so I define this table here, I return it, and that's just a way for Lua to know what like the output of this file is. And so that ends up going into this words to type local variable. This other stuff is pretty, self-explanatory. You have your title. I do have specific coordinates for the little avatar, the whale avatar. Um, List of keys. This is just A through Z. The words are only there's only like alphabetical characters in this game. I don't have you typing numbers or anything like that. I don't think that's super um important as the letters. So that's kind of why I left that out. Some just static text things. This is the main initial prompt you get. The wrong text or the verbiage for that scenario. Timers and things. Just a full list of initial values for various different um, variables that are going to be showing up a little bit later here. So we have our love.load. This loads in a lot of like the background things that you don't see in the game. So I'm setting up the physics. That's what these things are doing, these lines of code. I have, I create a whale object, and I build a new physics world. And I set it to, this is actually kind of important because I wanted the whale or Typey to kind of look like it's kind of swimming or floating, so to speak. So actually you can set a initial like um you can set a world to have basically any other or any kind of like gravitational pull. So it'll automatically like know what's up and what's down. And here setting this meter, I actually got this from the Love 2D physics tutorial. I actually have a short about that. me I recorded a demo of that. But that's this is setting like kind of like the distance, I think in pixels. If I'm wrong, like I'll correct myself or someone else can correct me. But I think this is setting the number of pixels a that one quote unquote meter in like the physical world would be equal to. So it kind of try and really closely mimics like the physics of the real world. And so that's what you see here. And again, I set it to 0, just so, kind of simulates that buoyancy. And then I build out a shape, and it's really just a circle. The actual like physical shape that Typey has in like the physics engine is a circle with a diameter of 1. So it's like, I think it says 1 pixel. I have to double check that. But honestly, it didn't matter too much because there's only one object in the game. If I had other objects, it would matter more, because then if you have those things colliding, or if you have the ball bouncing or anything like that, um, it can change the look and feel of the game. But here it doesn't matter too much, so that's why I'm not super concerned. And then here, this line just kind of glues the shape and the body together um, into what's called a fixture. And you can set how bouncy that fixture is. So I put it to 0, which is no bounce. But again, it doesn't matter too much because there's only one thing. And then so here I just load in the images. I'll talk about more of that later. But yeah, and then here, setting up the little different text prompts, the input text, prompt text, setting up colors. This was actually kind of interesting to me because in my head, RGB values make sense as like a 0 to 255. But in this language, or in Love2D, um, they use a 0 to 1 scale. So it's more of like a rational number that they use from, 0 is black, 1 is like 100% red or green or blue or whatever it is. So I ended up doing this, using this color from bytes function to convert from a 255 number, like a whole integer number, into what Love2D would actually accept. So here, this is the red that I'm using, and this is actually really important because my lovely wife actually called me out on this text being the wrong color as far as like color grading and accessibility. And so I had to be very particular about what red I was using here so that it would have, adequate color contrast between the color of the text and the color of the background. So shout out to my wife for helping me with that. Let's see. Set up the timer text. That's in the corner. Background. Oh, and then this is pretty interesting too. So initially I was using, the math.random function to randomly select the next word to show. Problem with that is it's all pseudo random. So every time you would restart the game, it would be the same words over and over again. And that completely kills replayability, obviously. And so I needed a way to mimic like a truly random number sequence. And this is how I'm able to achieve that, is just taking the current time of the operating system, putting that as the seed to the random, like the math library. And then from there, it'll generate random numbers, and I can get, a better spread of the words in the word bank. So yeah, so that's what it's doing. Here we have our love.draw function. This is actually pretty small than than the other things I have going on. I have it's pretty easy to understand. I'm just drawing the text and then conditionally drawing which whale image to display. So in this game I have 3, and so there's certain like state conditions that I'm checking on that tells me, okay, I need to draw this image of the whale. So if all things are good and it's, you know, Typey isn't dead, I have this little is dead check here. And so if that's false and there's still time left on the clock, then I draw, you know, the normal image of Typey. And then if Typey is dead, then I draw the little uh avatar where he has, you know, his eyes are X'd out and stuff. So that's what this does. And then finally, at the end of the game, which is what you see now, clicking on it, um, is the game end whale image. So I created 3 different images, and so that's what all that does. So super simple on that. Okay, so next we have text input. Um, another simple function, but basically I really just needed to be able to take in input from the keyboard and put it somewhere so that I can check it later, right? Because when I first started this project, I didn't actually like have a way of knowing that what was being inputted was the correct like actual word, right? And so I had to put this in to check all of that. And it's a little bit more complicated than you maybe would have thought initially. So what's happening here is whenever I'm getting a text input, it's only coming in as like a single character. And so I have to like kind of wait for like a trigger to know when um to like actually check for the whole word. And so fortunately, I have a way to do that, which I'll talk about in a second. But all that's happening here is I'm keeping track of the position of where the text is. And that way, when I get a new text or a new character and a new input, let's say type the letter A, then I add that to what's already on the screen. And that this and there's 2 ways that I'm doing that. One is I'm kind of just storing the value so I can check its actual like character value later. And then I have to basically redraw or draw the character on the screen. So that's what this ad is doing here. This input text is what's actually displayed on the screen. And so whenever I get a new character, then I have to add it and then update and draw it again. And you can see it drawn here on this line. Um, thinking back, I could probably change this get width to not that. I could probably change it to use typed in word and maybe it'd be more accurate. I might play with that later, but I know this works. So yeah, let's move on. Okay, so in love.update here, this is a lot of like, I guess the game logic per se, where depending on the state of the game, so like if the game is active or not, I have to do certain things. And then depending on where Typey is on the screen and depending on the timer, I have to like manage different states here. So once the game is active, oh, and this love.update, it mainly is a way to kind of keep track of time. This DT is like a difference in time that gets sent into this function from the library, from the framework. And so it does that really well. It's also a way to do different animations and things like that. But anyways, here I'm using it to help me with time. And so I have a 60-second timer. I'm setting the text every single time. So after I start it, obviously want to count down. So I have the interval 60 and I subtract the timer value from that to get the time remaining. And that's what you can see here. And I draw that. And then, oh, in this world, or this function, world update DT, this actually kind of this triggers the actual like physics engine to start. And so I had to put this in here. But of course only wanted to do that once the game's actually active. So that's why it's in here. Make Typey swim. So now that we started the timer, got all that going, we need to actually do something with Typey. And so in here, what I'm doing is I'm looking for keystrokes. I'm looking to see when like someone's actually typing, and that's what this keyboard dot is down. And you can actually give it a table, what it's called. And again, that this list of keys is just that A through Z. And so if you type any letter A through Z, it's going to trigger this as true. And if Typey isn't dead, then we're gonna start making him swim. He's gonna start swimming, and that's what this line does. It's I'm using a random number generator here. Basically apply force in an X and a Y direction. And so I make him kind of swim like forward mostly, and then only a little bit of variance like up and down. And so that's what you see here. This X value is the horizontal left and right, but um, it's it's mostly positive. I know that it's the range is from 1 to -3, but negative just means it's going towards the left, and so the way Typey is facing is left, so that's why I say positive. So I should say forward, and then the Y value is just kind of plus or minus 10, up or down. Okay, and then once we have that, oh, and this is kind of relational to when I set up Typey. So if you look here at this line, we have dot. When we do the fixture, you can also apply like I guess like a weight to it, like how like dense it is. I think is what they call it. Um, and so it's a 3, and I think that's pretty heavy if I remember correctly. Anyways, if it was less dense or kind of like a lighter weight object, I would have to make these values much higher, and then vice versa. So that's kind of why those values are like that. Okay. And then this is fine to do, right? But the problem can happen is if Typey swims off screen, then he'll just continue on forever. You'll never see him again. So I had to put in this logic to kind of make him swim, like kind of wrap around, like kind of like a Pac-Man world, where if he gets to one end, he kind of swims around, comes back to the other end, and you can still see him and keep track of him. And so that's what this logic does. And then finally, we have timer logic. This just keeps track, make sure that once the time is up, the game ends. So that's where I'm setting game is active to false. I'm giving that end prompt. In Lua, you can concatenate with the ... So that's what this does. We have this variable. You get correct words, super simple. It's just I'm just counting. I do it down here. I'll talk about in a sec. But yeah, I'm just counting the number of words you got correctly. I reset him Typey to not move. So that's what 00 is doing here. And then I center him in the middle of the screen. Okay. So once you press a button, this love.keypressed gets called, and I can check for certain inputs. So return is the enter key or the return key on some keyboards. And if that's clicked and the game is false or not active, and you have time remaining, meaning it's the very beginning of the game, I basically want to trigger the start of the game. And so that's what I'm doing here. I'm putting out a new prompt. I'm resetting the input. So like the actual typed in, the part that gets typed in, resetting all that, and then setting game is active to true. Now, if the space bar is clicked, then that's where this gets triggered. And this is important because that's when I know to, number one, not look for an input, a text input, but actually check the word that was typed in to see if it's correct. And so that's where this typed in word value, and you can see I'm concatenating the input and concatenating it to the typed in word. I have that set up here. And if it's equal to the current prompt text, then you got it correctly. I add that to the counter. Typey is no longer dead, and you can move on. And you can see here I'm just picking words by random, and so you'll get a brand new word on the next go. Now, if space is detected and you typed in the wrong word, then unfortunately Typey dies, and then you get a prompt text saying like try again, and then here I set Typey's velocity to basically kind of float towards the bottom wherever he's at, and that'll continue to happen until you type in the right word. And then regardless of all that, I reset input text because space denotes like you're done typing that word. And so I just want to reset the prompt, reset the typed in word, and reset the actual position of where I'm at on the cursor. And so, yeah, that's the whole game. That's the code. That's everything. Thanks for joining me. I'll see you in the next one.